You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. After North Korea invaded South Korea, the United Nations stepped in to help South Korea, leading the United States to send troops to the Korean Peninsula. This was to stop North Korea's progress and to prevent South Korea from falling. Since World War II had ended 5 years earlier, the number of American troops in the Far East had been on the decline. The first American division sent over was the 24th Infantry Division from the 8th United States Army, which was based in Japan at the time. This division wasn't in top shape. It was short on soldiers, and its equipment was outdated, largely from 1945 or before, due to budget cuts from the early days of Truman's presidency. Despite these challenges, the division was tasked with going into South Korea. The 24th Infantry Division had a critical role. It was to engage the first wave of North Korean forces, disrupting their plans and providing time for other American divisions and supporting units to establish a defensive perimeter around Pusan. Right before the Battle of Taejon took place, a tragic event occurred near Taejon with the Bodo League massacres. South Korean forces executed between 3,000 and 7,000 South Korean political prisoners who had leftist leanings, burying them in mass graves. This event was partially documented by a U.S. Army photographer. In the first clash between American and North Korean forces, Task Force Smith, which was part of the 24th Infantry Division, faced a tough defeat in the Battle of Osan on July 5th. Following this defeat, they had to retreat to Pyeongtaek, only to face another defeat there in the Battle of Pyeongtaek. The 24th Infantry Division found themselves pushed further south time and again, losing in several locations including Chocheon, Chonan, Hadong, and Yecheon, primarily because the North Korean forces outnumbered them and had better equipment. A significant challenge for the American forces was their lack of preparedness. Many were not in good physical shape, lacked training, discipline, and had no experience in combat. Major General William F. Dean, who led the division, made a strategic move on July 12th. He instructed its 3 regiments, the 19th Infantry Regiment, the 21st Infantry Regiment, and the 34th Infantry Regiment, to cross the Kum River. After crossing, they were to destroy all the bridges behind them and set up defensive lines around Taejon, a key South Korean city that was significantly important both geographically and strategically. Taejon, located about 100 miles south of Seoul and roughly 130 miles northwest of Pusan, was vital. Not only was it the division's headquarters, but its position made it a major crossroads for transportation, linking major cities and facilitating movement in various directions. The defense set up around Taejon involved the 34th and 19th Infantry Regiments covering the east, while the significantly weakened 21st Infantry was kept in reserve to the southeast. The city's natural geography, with the Kum River bending around its north and west and the Sobek Mountains to the south, provided a formidable natural defense line. Given Taejon's connectivity and its location being a pivotal transportation hub, controlling it was crucial for both the American and North Korean forces. This stand at Taejon was crucial. It represented the last opportunity for the American forces to delay the North Korean advance effectively before the opposing forces could target the still incomplete defensive positions of the Pusan perimeter. The battle for Taejon wasn't just about holding a city. It was about gaining time and safeguarding a crucial strategic point in the early stages of the conflict. When the 24th Infantry Division was deployed, its 3 infantry regiments, each supposed to have 3,000 soldiers for wartime, were not at full strength. In the 2 weeks leading up to now, they suffered heavy losses. The 21st Infantry Regiment was down to 1,100 men, after losing 1,433 soldiers. The 34th Infantry had 2,020 men, and the 19th Infantry had 2,276 soldiers. The division's artillery units had another 2,007 soldiers, bringing the division's total strength to 11,400. This number represents a significant drop from the 15,965 soldiers and 4,773 vehicles that had initially arrived in Korea at the start of the month. Each regiment was operating with only 2 battalions rather than the usual 3, because so many soldiers had to be pulled from combat due to fatigue. The morale among the troops was very low, with many soldiers struggling from exhaustion after several sleepless days. Additionally, the division saw a high rate of casualties among its officers, leading to younger and less experienced officers and non-commissioned officers stepping into leadership roles typically held by more seasoned personnel. The division was also facing severe equipment shortages. Earlier battles had depleted their artillery support to just 2 battalions. They were also running low on communications equipment, weapons, and ammunition, having lost a great deal of gear in previous fights. Most of the radios the division had didn't work, and they were desperately short on batteries, communication wires, and telephones, leaving some company formations with just 1 radio per squad. Moreover, the division didn't have any tanks. Their new M26 Pershing and older M4A3 Sherman tanks had not arrived yet. An essential weapon in their arsenal, the 3.5-inch M20 Super Bazookas, which could penetrate the North Korean T-34 tanks, were in short supply. The lack of radios and wires significantly hindered communication within the division and between its units. North Korean military strategists had a plan to capture Taejon by attacking it from 3 different directions with the help of tanks. They ordered the 3rd Division to launch an attack from the north, targeting the flank. The 4th Division was to strike across the Kum River from the east and south, aiming to encircle Taejon and the U.S. 24th Infantry Division stationed there. To support them, elements of the North Korean 105th Armored Division would also join in. However, the North Korean 2nd Infantry Division, which was supposed to attack from Cheongju against the American right flank, moved slowly and arrived too late to take part in the action. As the North Koreans pressed forward, the 3rd and 4th Divisions, backed by over 50 T-34 tanks, advanced on the town. These divisions, which typically included 20,000 men each, were operating at about 60 to 80% of their full strength. Despite this, they still had nearly twice as many soldiers as the American forces. Yet the morale among these divisions was quite low. They had been subjected to continuous air attacks that damaged their equipment, and they were worn out from ongoing battles. Despite this, political officers reassured the troops, promising them a chance to rest in Taejon once they had successfully captured the city. On the morning of July 14th, American troops from the 3rd Battalion 34th Infantry spotted T-34 tanks on the opposite side of the Kum River, 2 miles up from their position. Although the tanks fired across the river, they didn't cause any damage. By mid-morning, North Korean soldiers were seen crossing the river in boats, and soon artillery and mortar shells started landing among the American troops. In the chaos, with communication breaking down, the North Koreans managed to encircle the American positions. Another American battalion to the north also faced a strong North Korean attack, but managed to hold off the attackers for a time with the support of artillery, before being forced to pull back to safer ground. In the afternoon, a force of around 1,000 North Korean soldiers crossed the river. They overran an outpost of the 63rd Field Artillery Battalion, which had been supporting the 34th Infantry with its 105mm howitzers. They captured a machine gun and turned it against the headquarters battery, catching the Americans off guard. Artillery fire then crippled communications and destroyed vehicles, causing heavy losses among the Americans who eventually had to flee on foot to safety. Nearby, another battery was similarly attacked by 100 North Korean soldiers, suffering severe casualties and retreat. A larger force of 400 North Koreans was about to overwhelm another battery, but it was saved from the worst by an arriving South Korean cavalry, allowing for an orderly retreat. In these clashes, the 63rd Field Artillery lost all its guns and 80 vehicles which fell intact into North Korean hands. That evening, the 1st Battalion of the 34th Infantry tried to counterattack and reclaim their positions, but was beaten back by machine gun and small arms fire, retreating by nightfall. Following this, the decision was made by their commander, Dean, to destroy the captured equipment with an airstrike to prevent North Korean use. The day's fighting had left the northwest side of the American line significantly weakened, with both the 1st and 3rd Battalions having suffered heavy losses and forced into retreats. As the North Korean 4th Division began crossing the river, U.S. aircraft tried to slow their advance by targeting their boats, though with limited success. After initially pushing forward, the 34th Infantry headed south towards Nonsan, with the 19th Infantry moving its 2nd Battalion to fill in the gaps left behind, supported by South Korean troops. Together, they noticed a significant gathering of North Korean forces across the river. In the early hours of July 16th, these North Korean troops unleashed a heavy attack using tanks, artillery, and mortars on the 19th Infantry's positions and began crossing the river in boats. They quickly moved to attack the 1st Battalion's C and E companies, followed by an aggressive move against B Company. The North Koreans put considerable pressure on the entire battalion, almost overpowering it. The regiment's leader responded by sending all available support, including troops and officers, to strengthen the defense, which successfully pushed back the North Korean assault. Despite this effort, North Korean forces managed to get behind the front lines, attacking reserve forces and cutting off supply routes. Stretched too thin, the 19th Infantry found it impossible to maintain their position on the Coom River while fighting back the North Koreans. That same evening, an attempt by the 2nd Battalion to clear out North Korean forces behind them resulted in significant casualties without breaking the enemy's roadblocks. By July 17th, the 19th Infantry was forced to retreat, moving 25 miles southwest to regroup and resupply. Less than half of the 1st Battalion and only 2 companies from the 2nd Battalion were left in fighting shape. The 24th Infantry Division, which included the 19th and 34th Regiments, faced severe defeats, leaving them with the strength of just battalion-size formations after these encounters. Between July 13th and 16th, the 19th and 34th Regiments clashed with North Korea's 3rd and 4th Infantry Divisions, taking 650 casualties out of the 3,401 troops involved. On July 18th, Lieutenant General Walton Walker of the 8th Army ordered General Dean to hold Taejon until July 20th. This was to give time for the 1st Cavalry Division and 25th Infantry Division to set up defensive positions along the Naktong River, creating the Pusan perimeter. Amidst the retreat, a tragic event occurred known as the Chaplain Medic Massacre, where 31 U.S. soldiers were killed by North Korean forces. The North Korean military made their move on the city of Taejon on July 19th, entering the city which housed the headquarters of the 24th Infantry Division. They effectively cut off the 21st Infantry by setting up a roadblock between Taejon and Okshan, preventing the 21st Infantry from joining the conflict. However, the 21st Infantry tried its best to keep the escape route open for the rest of the division during the battle. At the same time, tanks from the North Korean 105th Armored Division rolled into the city, with infantry from the 3rd and 4th Divisions following closely. The North Koreans took over strategic buildings and set up sniper positions, while American counterattacks led to fires in several of Taejon's wooden buildings. The North Korean forces focused on destroying American gun positions, food supplies, and ammunition stores using intelligence gathered by agents in the city. The 24th Infantry Division, despite being heavily damaged, received orders to defend Taejon. The 34th Infantry also arrived to fight the North Koreans, who attacked directly and tried to encircle the city and cut off any retreat. The division commander, Dean, started organizing a retreat to Taegu by train for most of his men, but he stayed behind. Additional support came in the form of M24 Chaffee light tanks from a company of the 78th Tank Battalion. Yet on July 20th, North Korean tanks forced American troops back from the Taejon airfield and eventually overran the division's last defenses by the Coom River, trapping them in Taejon. For 2 days, the 34th Infantry engaged in intense close combat with the North Koreans, who infiltrated the city disguised as farmers. The North Koreans slowly pushed back the remaining forces of the 24th Infantry Division. Cut off from communication, Dean fought alongside his men and even destroyed a tank with a grenade. As large groups of North Korean troops approached from the south, American forces, suffering heavy losses, retreated. This allowed North Korean units from the 3rd and 4th Divisions to freely advance into the city from all directions. Despite attempts to hold their ground, the 24th Infantry Division was continually overpowered and forced back by the larger North Korean force. On July 20th, as the day was winding down, Dean made the decision for the 34th Infantry's headquarters to pull out. This move was supported by additional light tanks from the 1st Cavalry Division. As these tanks managed to break through a North Korean blockade, Dean and a handful of soldiers were right behind them. But when they were leaving the city, the last members of the 34th Infantry got caught in an ambush. Their convoy of 50 vehicles was heavily attacked by machine guns and mortars, leading to massive destruction and forcing the American soldiers to escape on foot. During this chaotic retreat, Dean's Jeep ended up taking a wrong turn, resulting in him and his group getting cut off from the main American forces. Finding themselves in a tough spot and unable to rejoin their unit, they tried to make their way back to American territory on their own. However, Dean found himself captured by North Korean forces after being on the run for 35 days, totally isolated in the hills. Throughout most of his captivity, the North Koreans didn't realize he was a high-ranking officer. Dean even pushed them to kill him because he was scared he might reveal sensitive information if tortured. Despite threats from the North Korean leaders, he wasn't actually tortured. Eventually, they figured out he was a high-ranking officer but failed to extract any intelligence from him. Meanwhile, when the final defenders from the 34th Infantry had left, the 21st Infantry, which was previously covering the escape route to Taegu, also had to withdraw. This effectively left the city of Taejon under North Korean control. Between the dates of July 13th to 16th near the Coom River, the U.S. 24th Infantry Division faced grave losses. 354 soldiers were killed, 156 were injured, and 185 were either missing or killed in action. Following this, from July 16th to 20th near Taejon, the division suffered even more, with 463 soldiers killed, 325 wounded, and 295 missing or killed in action. A significant portion of these casualties, especially those occurring from July 16th to 20th, belonged to the 34th Infantry Regiment. It was reported that some of the missing and captured soldiers were executed by the North Koreans right after the battle. Despite these heavy losses, the 24th Infantry Division managed to delay the North Korean forces until July 20th. By then, American forces had established a defensive line known as the Pusan Perimeter to the southeast. On July 22nd, the 24th Infantry Division was relieved by the 1st Cavalry Division, led by Major General John H. Church, due to the absence of Dean, whose location was not known at the time. Following 3 weeks of intense fighting, nearly 30% of the division had been lost. Lack of training, equipment, and preparedness, stemming from a lengthy period of occupation duty in Japan without adequate training, were cited as major reasons for these tactical losses. The extent of North Korean casualties remained unclear due to communication issues during the battle, which also hindered American signals intelligence. However, it was estimated that North Korean armor faced severe damage, with 15 to 20 tanks destroyed by anti-tank weapons and U.S. aircraft. North Korean prisoners estimated the loss of 15 76mm guns, 6 122mm mortars, and about 200 artillerymen. The NK 3rd Division in particular suffered heavily, starting with 60 to 80% of its strength and being reduced to just 50% by the end of the battle, with total casualties ranging between 1,250 to 3,300. By the battle's end, American forces had managed to match the numbers of attacking North Korean forces on the Korean peninsula. The 24th Infantry Division's efforts in and around Taejon earned it the Presidential Unit Citation and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. The division then entered reserve status for rest and reconstruction, with its first unit, the 19th Infantry Regiment, returning to the front lines of the Pusan Perimeter on August 1st. The first 2 Medals of Honor awarded in the Korean War were a result of bravery shown during the Battle of Taejon. Dean received the first Medal of Honor for his frontline actions, although he was captured and remained a prisoner of the North Koreans until the war's end in September 1953. Sergeant George D. Libby was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroic efforts to help wounded soldiers to safety. He was killed in the process. Additionally, Chaplain Herman G. Fellholter received the Distinguished Service Cross for his role in a tragic event now known as the Chaplain Medic Massacre, which occurred near the Coom River. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.